Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, rolling out hour number 2 on a Thursday. So glad you could join us. And lots to get to here coming up in the next few hours. But, you know, the guy we have with us on the line right now, I've been wanting to talk to him for a long time. He decided that he is running for the presidency of the United States as a Republican. And it's not like he's not a stranger to politics. This guy has an unbelievable history. He's been around a very, very, very long time. In fact, he even served in Congress from 95 to 2001 and 2013 to 19, was governor of South Carolina from 2003 to 2011. He's been around a long time. He's got a lot of experience. Mark Sanford joins us right now on the line. Mark, I appreciate you coming on. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for letting me join you.
Yeah, I appreciate it,
Mark.
So let me ask the basic question to start out with. What made you decide to enter this race?
I believe, as an absolute core conviction, that we're walking our way toward the most predictable financial crisis in the history of our nation, and we're not even debating it. We're not even having a conversation. On the Democratic side, it's a debate of more versus more, and on the Republican side, it's sort of the three monkeys of I hear no evil, I see no evil, I speak no evil. And so you look at trillion-dollar deficits that we've never run in peacetime and good economic times as we have right now. You look at the deficits that are accumulating, the fact that, the debt's going up by $100 million an hour, and we're having zero conversation about it, and it's going to have profound consequence, not just for us, but frankly, our kids and grandkids.
I mean, do you think it's just a distraction with all this stuff going on? First it was the Mueller report and now the impeachment inquiry. Because I happen to believe that the president isn't above the law, and I'm sure you would agree with me on that one. Sure. Obviously, it's a distraction, and it takes away from helping people in this country and policy, and I'm sure you would agree with that as well. But let me ask you this. What do you make of this impeachment inquiry, and do you think it's hurting the country?
I do think it's hurting the country. I don't think anybody should be above the law in our country, period, president, anybody else. But what I have said is if you look at the last two impeachments, they took place at the beginning of second terms wherein, frankly, there was little other recourse to the Congress. What I've said is it's a lot cleaner. Just go ahead and if you find wrongdoing and you can prove it, again, one is innocent until proven guilty, but if you find it, then censure him. And say, we don't approve, but we trust the American public to get it right because the election is just a matter of months away. We trust you. I think that's a lot cleaner message than an impeachment that doesn't go anywhere because by all accounts, on both sides of the aisle, there's agreement that it's going to be awfully tough to get 20 Republican senators in the Senate. And if you do that, what you do is you have something that sucks all the oxygen in the air out of the room in our ability to discuss other issues that are relevant and important to people's lives, and you codify his behavior. And by all accounts, there's been some weird behavior from his end, whether it's impeachable or not is a debate, but it certainly behavior unlike any other president on some of this stuff. And so what you don't want to say is, see, I've done nothing wrong. The Senate absolved me of guilt. So I think a censure would be a lot simpler. Get on with it. Let the people decide. And let's get back to issues and discussion on things like the debt and the deficits that are accumulating. They're going to really hurt our lives.
And I certainly do not disagree with you on that, and it needs to be talked about. But and if, by the way, if you're just joining us, Republican candidate for president Mark Sanford on the line. Now, but I got to ask you this. You joined former Massachusetts Governor William Weld and former Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh seeking the GOP nomination. Trump has referred to the three of you on Twitter as the Three Stooges. What is your reaction to that?
Not to react. It's the same crazy spin cycle. I mean, what he always says is something inflammatory. People stand up on top of the table and say, "Oh, I disagree. I'm wrong. He's wrong. Whatever." They respond, and about the time the media stop covering that, then there's a new crazy accusation the following week. I mean, it's the same spin cycle. And what he does is he controls the media cycle in that process, which may be good for him, but it's not good for us because it means we're not discussing issues. So I've said, you can call me whatever you want to call me. You can call me Donald Duck, or you can call me, I don't know, Pickett. But but at the end of the day, who I am is irrelevant. I happen to be a two-term governor. I happen to serve 12 years in the United States Congress. But I'm a guy that's a taxpayer, and I just care about the way in which we're burning money in Washington, and we're setting ourselves up for a financial collapse that would hurt every one of us, and we're sleepwalking our way toward it.
You also have a decorated military background, so thank you for your service. In that regard, I want to ask you this. I believe that...
Let's be clear. It's not decorated. I was a pencil pusher. I was, there are guys out there at the front, and there are a lot of people that support those guys that are out at the front. I was not at the front. I was just, in a support role many, many layers back.
How would you handle social media as president of the United States? I think Twitter and Facebook is necessary in this day and age, and obviously Donald Trump goes over the top. But how would you handle it? How consistent would you make tweets, et cetera?
I think it's okay to use them since that seems to be a way that people communicate. I don't particularly like it because I think a lot of the problems confronting our society cannot be boiled down to, 200-something characters. They're just more complex than that. We'd love to make everything that simple. We'd love to dumb down arguments. And at times they involve rolling up the sleeve and sitting across your brother, your business partner, across the kitchen table, and you got to talk for an hour to get it figured out. Yeah. And the same holds true in politics. And so I would say I'd use it sparingly because I don't think that all issues can be boiled down as simply as at times we try and do in the modern age to fit with media. And I'd also say I do it with respect. I think that one of the problems of this president is that, whether it's General Mattis being the dumbest general or General Kelly, who's now the dumbest chief of staff, or Rex Tillerson, who's dumb as a rock, though he ran one of the biggest corporations in America and was the president's Secretary of State for a while. I just think that you don't have to tear everybody else down to convey or uplift your own ideas.
Well, I want to bring that up because, as you know, Mark, when you decided to enter this race, you knew that people were going to try to pick you apart, people that weren't on your side politically. And, you're no stranger to conflict, and you've made your mistakes. Nobody's perfect, and we all understand that. But you had the issue in 2009 where you faced the word impeachment, right? You faced the word impeachment without getting into grave details because that's not why we wanted you to have you on the show today. But you had that issue in 2009 where you said you were in the Appalachians or in Argentina, and you were having an extramarital affair.
I never said anything. Somebody who was on my team said it, and if they said it, I'll own it. Obviously, there's great regret around them saying it, but there's even greater regret around the fact that I lived a lie in that chapter of my life. I fell in love with somebody I shouldn't have fallen in love with. And it was disastrous at many different levels. But here's the amazing part of the story. I finished out the year and a half in the governorship. It is an amazingly humbling journey to go on when the people who know you best a couple years later say, look, we don't approve of how you handle that chapter of life. You let yourself down, your God down, your boys down, a variety of others. But we know you and we trust you, and we'll give you a second chance, and we'll send you back to the United States Congress to represent us.
Right.
That is an amazingly humbling journey to go on. And all I'd simply say in that is I learned a lot. And again, I'm not making excuses for it, but I learned a lot.
And one other question on that, and then we'll move on to another subject, because I don't want to misstate what happened. I want to be fair to you. So is it a fair statement to say that you lied to your staff and you told your staff that you were hiking and you didn't tell them the truth? Is that a fair statement to make?
Again, there's always a conspiracy that's created in these things, which there wasn't. I told one person, thinking that one person, and only one person, might call. If you want to get really technical, I was under trial separation with my wife at that time.
Gotcha.
And I thought she might be the only person that called. I told that one person, she called, tell her this. Here's a great lesson for everybody listening out there. That, little, not so little, that white lie to one person, aimed for one person, became a national laughingstock and a national story. And it's a reminder to all of us of the fact that there is no such thing as a little white lie.
Right.
And that which you might intend for one person can end up being, in my case, a national news story with incredible consequences for me and those that I love.
Now, and I am sorry that you had to go through that. And I think any decent human being
it's my
felt.
own doing.
Yeah.
I'm not turning excuses to anybody else.
Sure.
It's my own fault, and the consequences came with it.
So two-part question then, and we can move on. And I appreciate your candid and honesty with that. So number one, how does President Trump get away with the lies on a daily basis? And number two, I'm amazed that you are still willing to be in the public eye. Even knowing that a situation like that can just be extraordinarily embarrassing. And being in the public eye, you've been through it. You've been through difficult times. So number one, how does Trump get away with it on a daily basis? And do you not think about that when you decided to get back into this race, that you would be among scrutiny for it?
I'd say it's to the second point. Of course, I thought about that, and it was one of the sort of last T's to cross and I's to dot with my four sons. I went to them and I said, "Look, you guys have been through the fire on this thing before. At the end of the day, if you don't want me to do it, I won't do it." And they, it took them a while because they're skittish based on the trial that I put all of them through. But ultimately, I said, "Dad, this is really important, and you do need to talk about it. Don't know that you'll be successful, but this needs to be talked about." And so after I got their blessings, I moved forward. And but was it something I thought about? Yes. Was it something I was concerned about? Yes. But I'd say this. I remember talking to somebody in the church, and they made this point. It's something I've hung on to, and I've just passed it along for what it's worth. And they said, Satan's the great tempter before things happen, but then he's the great reminder after things happen. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And what happens if you've made a mistake in your life is there is a temptation based on the remembrance that you have of that event or the fact that other people remind you of that event, is just to go crawl in your hole for the rest of your life and hide because you just don't want to, reopen the scab or have people pick at the scab. But that's a mistake. I mean, all of us are imperfect. I mean, one of the things that I've walked away from that experience with is an altered view toward judgment and a much greater level of empathy toward others and the frailty of the human condition and the fact that we all have a chapter of life, whether public or private, we wish we could push rewind play on, but that's not how life goes. And so you do as best you can in the day you got, and hopefully you give people a little bit of grace and them making their way through their day. But what's important is for all of us to crawl back out into the arena of life and say, look, I'm an imperfect human being. I'm an imperfect messenger. But here's some things I believe. And I think that that's something that we should all think about.
So let's talk policy here. We've had another Republican presidential candidate on the show, and he basically stated that he was running on the fact that he wasn't Donald Trump, which
Joe Walsh. Yep.
With Joe Walsh, which I don't think really is enough. What are you running on policy-wise that is different from Donald Trump, Mark?
Well, I'd say the big one, as we've been talking, is the deficit in government spending. End of story. That's the bullseye. I mean, I was rated the most financially conservative governor in the United States of America by the Cato Institute. I got the different merit badges when I was in Congress by the National Taxpayers Union or Citizens Against Government Waste. I mean, I think I was the first governor in the United States of America to turn back stimulus funds when they were offered back in 2008. I was, a governor who walked in with a pig underneath each arm in the State House decrying the fact that they were putting pork over a constitutional mandate on limited spending. I mean, I could give you, again, hundreds of stories where I've tried to fight the fight on watching out for your pocketbook or your wallet. And so the bullseye for me is our numbers are absolutely unsustainable. And it's my simple hope, and I'm not delusional about becoming president. I can't beat Trump in the nomination. I'm not delusional there. It's a simple hope that if a bunch of us get together, though, and raise this issue, we can maybe make it a part of this debate. Because if we don't, we're going to wait 5 years to have a debate on spending, and I believe it'll be too late. The history is that financial markets correct numbers if politics won't. And if we wait, the financial markets will correct it for us, and it'll be bloody for your savings account, your retirement account, your ability to get a job and go down the list. And so the primary goal of mine is where I'm on debt and spending. The president is at a different spot. He said if you elect me, I'll eliminate the debt over the 8 years that I might be in office. And instead, he's done the reverse, and
Right.
he's proposed budgets that increase the debt by $9 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say the big one is on debt and spending, but another one is on trade. I mean, I think we got to have a conversation as Republicans about what we believe on engagement with the rest of the world. I think it's a mistake to back away to the degree that he has. I would say as well, the president at times goes sort of overtime in tearing down institutions that are part of the glue that's held our system together. And it's not to say that institutions don't need to be challenged. It doesn't mean that some don't need to change. But when the president goes out and says that Jerome Powell, who's the chairman of the Federal Reserve, is an enemy of the state, that's too far. I mean, what you're doing is you're creating greater distrust in, again, institutions that are part of the fabric of what I think has held balance of power in place for 200-plus years.
Mark, do you mind if we take a few phone calls from some of our listeners that have some questions for you? Great, I appreciate that. Joining us on the line
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Joining us on the line right now is Republican presidential candidate Mark Sanford. Certainly has a ton of experience in the political world, and we'll open up the phone lines to you right now at 702-257-5396. Again, that number to call, 257-5396, if you have any questions for Mark Sanford. Why don't we start off with Stephen? Stephen, you're on with Mr. Sanford. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Sanford or Miss Mark, or what would you prefer to be called?
Hey, you, Mark, whatever.
Just don't call you late for supper, okay? I tell you, I most respect for Trey Gowdy from South Carolina, and I just do you know? Are you familiar with? Are you friends with him?
Oh yeah. We served in Congress together.
Okay, great. I'm assuming you're going to have a website or something that people can get to.
Yeah, you can go to it. It's marksanford.com, and you can get more charts and graphs than you'd ever want to see on debt, deficit, and government spending. But I think that they're important. So there aren't enough happy pictures, but there are plenty of charts and graphs that I think are important to your life.
Got it. I will be taking a look at it, and hopefully I'll be able to. I'm shadow banned from time to time, but I hope that whoever does that sees fit to allow our communications. I think that, as you made reference to, the glue that held our society together, I think is the Constitution, and I think that the First Amendment had to be first for a reason. Mm-hmm. And when we lose that, when we start arresting people for what they say, we're definitely headed in the wrong direction.
Stephen, I appreciate the call. Let's let Mr. Sanford comment on that. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I mean, I'd just say two things. One, to his point, if people want to learn more and kick the tires as to what I'm about, go to marksanford.com, and they can, again, draw conclusions for themselves, particularly with regard to the degree to which we all need to focus on this debt and deficit problem and how it's going to impact our lives. As to the First Amendment, the Constitution, and the framework that the Founding Fathers were absolutely genius in setting up, I could not more completely agree. And, I mean, they were so studied in the way that they looked at history and thought of its implications in the way that politics ought to work. I totally agree with what he said.
All right, why don't we go to Kathy? It's my understanding that Kathy met Mark Sanford at the Vegas sign when Mark was in town. Kathy, go ahead. You're on with Mark Sanford.
Hi. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on. Governor Sanford, it was an honor to meet you. And
well, other way around. What a small world. I get to see you then and talk to you now. So other way around.
I was just so impressed because you and I had spoken about the situation you'd gone through in your personal life. Mm-hmm. But the fact that you have such humility and worked through it, and you're so transparent about it, excuse me, is that it just so blows away what we're living with now with someone who
that's a good point.
Can never say, I was wrong, I'm sorry, nothing.
Kathy, can I interject here? Kathy, you're so right. You make such a good point, by the way. I want to ask Mark Sanford about that. Have we ever heard the President of the United States apologize for anything, Mark?
No, I'm sure he has, in fairness to him as a human being. But, yeah, what he said publicly is basically there's nothing for which I'm sorry. And I'm thinking, respectfully, what kind of world do you live in? I mean, most of us, we do walk around, and there are as I said earlier, things that we wish we could redo and do differently, but that's not life. We get it as best we can as we go through, and sometimes we do make mistakes. What's important is to say you're sorry and move from there. And I appreciate so much Kathy noticing that. I do try and own my stuff. I think we all own our stuff.
Sure.
We all got stuff, but we ought to own it.
I agree with you. Kathy, thank you so much for the phone call. I couldn't agree with you more, and that's something that Donald Trump can learn from, I think. 257-5396, you have a question for Mark Sanford. Why don't we go to Marge? Marge, you're next on the Vegas Take. You're on with Mark Sanford. Go ahead.
What's up, Marge?
Thank you for taking my call. I've been seeing your advertisements and everything, and I think they're great. I guess I have a two-part question. And by the way, I agree with you about this whole issue on the deficit. It's kind of shocking that a Republican is doing what they're doing. But my two-part question is, number one, a lot of people have already gotten into the campaign. They're accumulating their funds. They're up in the polls. So that question is, what's your strategy to get, equal to or better than them? The second is, as Brian and JD certainly know, we've been talking about this whole homeless issue. And do you have any thoughts about how we can address, that problem on a city or national basis?
Good questions, Marge. Mark, what do you say to that?
As to trying to work my way up in the polls, it's a day-at-a-time process, and it's all the traditional ingredients that go into politics, whether that's, I did a show in Boston. I'm up here in New Hampshire right now the other night. You talking to folks there. I was just walking through a shopping center. I was talking to folks there. It's just trying to be out there, and what is you can't do it on your own. It's really important that I oddly enough, I'll have to send it to you guys. We just produced a $1 trillion bill with my name on the face of it. Looks like a dollar bill, but it's in fact a $1 trillion bill, and it has some sort of fun stuff on it, talking about the $22 trillion debt, how the debt's going up by $100 million an hour, and it's got the website and whatnot. But and I'll make it a point right after the show to send it to you. But I was saying in a social media post that we put out, please send this to friends, because I can't do this. I can't create the conversation on my own. But if enough of us do, I can be a catalyst for other people talking about it. The crazy $1 trillion bill can be a catalyst for people talking about it. If enough of us do, then we can get somewhere. And that's what I'd ask for folks to think about. As to homelessness, I think it ultimately, I believe in what the Constitution laid out, in that those powers that were there for the federal government ought to be handled by the federal government. But those powers not enumerated, named, are left to the states and to local government and to individuals. And so I think that the homelessness issue ultimately ought to be tackled at a municipal and a county and occasionally a state level, but probably best handled at a more local level than having one-size-fits-all coming out of Washington, D.C.
That's certainly what's happening here in Las Vegas. Well, listen, Mark, next time you're in Las Vegas, we'd love to have you in studio and invite you back in. Maybe you could spend a little bit more time with us. We really do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on, and we wish you luck with your campaign. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks so much, and I'll send you $1 trillion. It's on me, all right?
That sounds good. That sounds good.
I'm holding you to that, Mark. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. We appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks. Republican presidential candidate Mark Sanford joining us. I'll take him up on that. I'll take $1 billion cash. That's fine.
He actually said $1 trillion.
$1 trillion. I apologize. Gosh, I'm undervaluing the offer.
That would make us the richest men in the world by about $350 billion.
I think we
Get out of my way, Jeff Bezos. You're done.
Would probably be able to build our own studios with that much money.
Maybe.
Yeah. All right. So when we come back, this is a story that is really ticking me off. We've had a couple stories that have ticked me off today. NBA players deciding to take a day off when there is a game. Are you effing kidding me? $25 million a year and you're going to take days off from work? Oh. We're going to get to this. The NBA is allowing it to happen. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to The Vegas Take.